Good evening, everyone, and welcome back once again to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall. This is my co-host, Bill McIntyre. Just two guys discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, then giving you our viewpoint and our opinion on those issues. We have our podcast episodes all over social media. We'd love for you to go to all of those like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and of course Rumble, where we have our podcast channel. If you share those social medias all over your own, then we can spread this podcast even more. But if you would, we would love for you here at the We Are Marshall podcast to like, share, follow, and subscribe on our Rumble channel. Just download the Rumble application. It's free, and it's just like YouTube, and it's free to listen to our episodes and our complete show. Also, go check out our website at wearemarshallpodcast.com. There you can see all the things that Bill and I are doing in one page of information. Bill's got his Vela Stories on there, which is a thing through Kindle, where you can listen and watch and also read some of his episodes. And you also can go purchase my first novel that just came out, The Unforeseen Enemy. You can get that on Amazon, the Amazon store. And also this Friday, I will be releasing my second novel called The Perception Therapist. Look for that, and I will be putting that out to be scheduled tomorrow, to be released on Friday. Also, we'd love for you to go check out our sponsors, such as Local Prints New Hampshire, a full-scale screen printing company that can handle all your screen printing needs. They are in Hampstead, but they are nationwide. They can do anything all over the country. So go check them out. There is a link on the top left of our webpage that you can click on and go right to their page. Also, you can check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com, large dating website with all the bells and whistles of the big players in the dating market, but for a much less inexpensive price. So we've got a lot, as usual, to cover. We've got a multitude of topics today. So I'm gonna jump right into my first topic today, and that's going to be based upon, my theme today is going to be based upon the economy, okay? And Bill's is going to be based upon history and a Supreme Court justice information. But as we jump into this, the first topic right away is inflation ran hotter than expected in January, complicating the Fed's rate decision. So inflation ran hotter in January than had been forecast by economists, signaling that higher prices remain sticky and complicating the Federal Reserve's decision about when to begin cutting its benchmark rate. As with inflation last month, higher housing and food prices were the big drivers. Consumer prices rose 3.1% in January from a year earlier, the government said on Tuesday. Now, let me explain that key there to you so you understand. Consumer prices rose 3.1% in this January compared to last January. That doesn't mean that they didn't go up from that January to now. You got to remember that, people. This is how the government tricks you into thinking things are doing better. You got to remember that consumer price that rose, that's added on top of all the rises that happened from January of last year. So It's not really 3.1. So pay attention to that.
3.1, yeah.
It's up 3.1 from last year, they're saying, but that don't mean it's up 2.9 from the month prior to that gauge. That's all. But that keeps adding on. That's up and up and up. There's no down there. So with that being said, the economists had expected January prices to rise at a 2.9% pace from a year ago, according to FactSet. Even so, the pace reflected an improvement from December, when inflation rose at an annual rate of 3.4%. Okay, now they're going back to annual rates, if you see. So now that they talk about a comparison to January of a year ago, and then they retract to annual rate, which is the 3.4%. So all prices have been rising by about 3.4% for this year, okay? The January inflation data will help inform the Fed's rate decision at its March meeting, with Fed Chairman Jerome Powell telling CBS News 60 Minutes earlier this month that the central bank wants to see more proof that inflation is cooling before cutting rates. Grocery prices rose sharply in January, an issue for consumers who most frequently encounter the grip of higher inflation while food shopping. Consumers are still feeling the pinch of higher prices for the things they buy most often, noted Bright MLS chief economist Lisa Sturtevant in an email after the inflation data was released. She added, inflation is generally moving in the right direction, down significantly from its peak of 9.1% in June 2022. Now, again, I want to explain this to you. That was the peak. So it was up at 9.1 at one point. Remember, it hasn't gone like to negative. So every time they say that there's an increase, it adds on to something like that 9.1. That's where inflation's going. So don't let them throw these little willy-nilly numbers out there to trick you to think that, oh, it's only a single-digit increase. No, our inflation has gone up 20-something% since this all started. But it's important to remember that a lower inflation rate does not mean that prices of most things are falling. Rather, it simply means that prices are rising more slowly. For instance, food prices are 25% higher than in January 2020. This is what I'm talking about. See, now they're throwing the 25% around. Prior to the pandemic, while rents are up 22% over the same period, she noted. When will the Fed cut rates? Well, the mixed data released Tuesday could reinforce the Fed's caution, meaning he won't be cutting rates, with officials saying they are pleased with the progress in sharply reducing inflation, but want to see further evidence that it's sustainably headed back to their 2% target. Most economists think the central bank will wait until May or June to begin cutting its benchmark rate from its 22-year high of roughly 5.4%. The Fed raised its key rate 11 times from March 2022 to July of last year. Joe Biden's only been in office 3 years, and it's been raised 11 times, my friends. Think of that. In a year concerted drive to defeat high inflation. The result has been much higher borrowing rates for business and consumers, including for mortgages and auto loans. Rate cuts, whenever they happen, would eventually lead to lower borrowing costs for many categories of loans. Mortgage rates are likely to drift lower once the Fed starts cutting rates, Sturtevant noted. But prospective homebuyers may not feel that much relief as they continue to see higher prices at the grocery store and at the gas pump, she added. And home prices, which are not measured in the CPI, are also rising, which we knew when the pandemic was going on. We knew that people had to bid $100,000 over the asking price of a home just to be able to get considered, to even get to a chance to have that offer considered. So this situation is really bad. They're going to continue to gaslight you, and I'm going to show you how they gaslight you in my next segment about everything to do with the economy, because they know that they have to pick certain things out of the economy to make it look good, because we're in an election year, and Joe Biden's numbers are so bad. And as we said yesterday from James Carville back with Clinton, it's the economy, stupid, and it's still going to rear its head in this election. What do you think about all this, Bill?
Yeah, I watched this story on 3 different networks today just to get all the spins. And with the exception of some networks leaving out some information, other networks offer it up, the picture is pretty clear here, okay? That they're not explaining like you are, okay, the fact that it's not 3%, it's up an additional 3%, which is enormous. And also, when they talked about it, one network, Fox, dared to mention that it was the direct result of printing money, which is something we've talked about so many times. It was, I think the number was that there's been $500 billion in additional spending. You got to figure the border Ukraine bill that just passed yesterday has, what, $112 billion in it? Okay.
Yeah.
Just that alone. Well, that money is not coming from anywhere. We're not on the gold standard since 1972. Okay. So we have another $500 billion that is just being spent. Well, that's why inflation goes up, because the dollar's not worth what it used to be. Now we're on the verge of losing the petrodollar completely. The dollar is not the benchmark for the world economy, and probably in the near future this keeps going. We're probably going to be downgraded credit wise if it keeps going, and people just go on like everything's fine. It's not, and I'm glad that somebody pointed out that how much additional spending. They also pointed out that other funds could be taken from other parts of the government and allocated to absorb some of this. But they don't want to do that. They're clinging to their policies that got them where they are. And it's unfortunate because the people that are suffering are just the average Americans. I was in the store yesterday and I spent about $118 on the groceries I could carry with both hands. It wasn't a big shop at all. And the poor guy behind me, he just mentioned to me, he goes, oh, I can't afford to eat anymore. I mean, I'm not making this up. This is a guy that's standing in the grocery line at a supermarket telling me this. So this is an important story. I can't wait to see your second segment about it. The stock market was really influenced by it today. Some big hits.
We will talk about that definitely in the next.
I figured that's why.
The thing I look at is, let's be real, okay? I am a single man. Okay, I do have a daughter that I have half the time, but I'm a single man shopping in the grocery store, right? Bill, just the past 2 weeks, I've spent over $500 on groceries.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't buy many groceries, and I'm spending a couple hundred a week.
But you know me, I eat very healthy and I prep my food, so it is going to be a little more than the average person. But that's 502 weeks. Like a family used to be able to eat on $150 in groceries. Yeah. I just spent $250 each week as an individual. Yeah, I do feed my daughter and other people, but it's not as exorbitant as, say, the family I used to have when I had 3 kids, and a girl and myself.
It's crazy. You're shopping. You don't do anything exorbitant, and you got to be price conscious and all that. It's just it's so ridiculous right now because wages are not keeping up with it. Bottom line, it's not.
They're not at all. They're trying to do it with the wages, so I give them credit with that. But that's shaking down businesses, and that's going to make it tougher for businesses. They're going to have to raise their prices, and there goes
lay off people.
Yep, and there goes the CPI again. Either way, it's going to get affected, but. Good story. Right. Pay attention to the economy. Don't let them hoodwink you on many of these issues by throwing these little numbers out. Because bottom line, you got to remember one thing. They're politicians. Their whole shtick is to make things look good. Basically, make it look like they have power. And you want to feed into that power. And by saying that they're doing well economically, they're showing their power. But it's not true. Don't let them gaslight you. But we'll move on to the next one. We're going to do this podcast a little different per Bill's request today. He's going to do is actually this day in history now. As I always say, we love this segment on the WeAreMarshallPodcast.com because like yesterday, I learned something new. Bill did too, and let's learn something today. Go right ahead, Bill.
Always do. Well, last night, Steve, we had a pretty spirited, fair-minded, and I encourage you to watch it if you haven't already, discussion on race. We're 2 guys. We're not afraid to talk about race. We're not offensive when we speak of it. We're not biased. Our attitude towards race is let's stop talking about it. But it's always in the news. So this being Black History Month, I chose some topics to discuss it. And I'm focusing on one individual. I'm focusing on Clarence Thomas, who was in the news today. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about Black History Month real quick, okay? Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans in their time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. There are people who say that, they shouldn't, not they, but there shouldn't be 1 month dedicated to one group of people. But the fact is that it's not a new thing. It wasn't launched during the era of political correctness. It actually was started many, many years ago. In fact, it's 1915 when it started, which was 50 years after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. And we had a Harvard-trained historian, Carter G. Woodson, and the prominent minister, Jesse E. Moreland. They founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, an organization dedicated to researching and promoting achievements by Black Americans. And now it's called the Study of African American Life. They decided to use this to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, of course, 2 figures who were huge in the emancipation of slavery. So having said that, Black history is always going to be an event that causes some controversy because there's always going to be someone who comes out and says that someone should or shouldn't be be honored and recognized. And there's no surprise that came up again this round, if you will. So right now, as in a month, we're supposed to be celebrating, diversity in Black history. People are talking about a Black national anthem, and everybody's saying this guy's too Black, and this guy's not Black enough, and DEI and everything is ravaging the headlines. It's just a mess. But I came across a little thing about Clarence Thomas Day, which I'm going to cover as my other story, if you will, about how he shouldn't be honored, and then a counter opinion piece of how he should be honored. So what I want to do is I want to give a brief history of Clarence Thomas before I give Steve his next segment, and then I'll go farther on. Okay, Clarence Thomas, as we know.
Before you proceed, I just want to interject one thing that's relevant right now. You're so right about this race thing. I'm glad we talked about it last night, but I know the audience, some audience people are going to be like, yeah, 2 50-year-old white guys talking about race. I mean, you can say that, and that's fine. We respect that, but we also have the right to speak about race, okay, whether you think we shouldn't or not. But the point being is this exact example that drives me insane. Ready? The Super Bowl just got played, okay?
Yep.
And ESPN, and I commented on Facebook, put out a thing on Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes is now the first Black quarterback to win back-to-back Super Bowls. Who gives a shit? He's a man that's very good at his vocation, and all the power to him, deservingly so. He is part of a team that won back-to-back Super Bowls. I don't care if he's black, white, orange, yellow. I don't care. Why do we have to put that identity in there? Hey, I'm just going to say this. Patrick Mahomes, I'm not a big fan of you, but I'm not going to take away from your ability. You are a very talented quarterback, maybe the best I've ever seen, and I'm a diehard football fan. So I'm going to say that, even though I don't really care for you as a person from what I see. But this stupid stuff you should not want to even be hearing if you are Black, because it continues to pound that race drum. Now, Bill, run right ahead with this segment, my friend.
No, you're right. It has nothing to do with it, Steve. It does. And I'm so sick of everybody starting a sentence with a Black or a white. Tom Brady was the last quarterback to go back-to-back. No one said the first white quarterback to do it.
Exactly.
It's like, I know that there are less Black quarterbacks, so I understand that there's a focus in the NFL on that, and I get that. But
here's the thing. I believe there were other white quarterbacks that have won back-to-back, but I'm willing to bet they never said he was the first white quarterback. I bet you that what they said to them is he was the first quarterback. Okay, whatever. That's fine.
Exactly. First player, first athlete.
Yeah.
All right.
Go for
so
it.
Clarence Thomas, I just want to mention a little backstory to him because it's going to come up on this pieces I'm going to be doing after. He's an American lawyer and jurist and now serves as an associate justice to the Supreme Court. Okay, most people know that, but just to refresh, an associate justice simply means he's not the chief justice, but he's one of the longest serving members of the court right now. He's nominated by President George H.W. Bush to succeed Thurgood Marshall, who was the first Black, unfortunately, justice on the Supreme Court. And he's been on this since 1991. Now, if anyone remember, there was a very contentious hearing where towards the end of it, Anita Hill, a former employee of his at the Equal Employment Opportunity Agency, alleged sexual harassment and all that. And it's largely theorized that his opponents put her up to this. Now, I'm not saying it's definitive, but there's a theory that they put her up to this because they definitely opposed Clarence Thomas because he was a conservative Black, and they felt that he wasn't representing his race properly, which he did not care about. Famously, he did not care about. So in 1991, he went from being a member of this appeals court, in which he wrote 42 decisions. He lined himself closely with Antonin Scalia, who was the reigning prominent conservative on the bench at the time. And he was promoted upon Thurgood Marshall's death to replace him. They were very different politically, but they did replace Thurgood Marshall. Thing about Clarence Thomas is he is hardcore conservative, and he's not afraid to talk about how he rules and how he forms his opinions and what the factors are behind it. He is an originalist. Okay, originalist as far as a law practitioner is concerned means he follows a method of constitutional and statutory interpretation. Originalists assert that legal text should be interpreted based upon the original understanding at the time of the adoption, which means you have to factor in what the events were at the time in extenuating circumstances when that decision was made. Originalists object to the idea of the significant legal evolution being driven by judges in common law framework, and he believes that modifications should be done through constitutional amendments only. Okay, second thing about him is that he's a believer in classic liberalism. It's a very deceiving term because we think liberalism, we think about leftist policies. But classic liberalism, for the sake of this conversation, means it's a political tradition and a branch of liberalism that advocates free market and laissez-faire, which means no regulations, economics, and civil liberties under the rule of law, with special emphasis on individual autonomy, limited government, economic freedom, political freedom, and freedom of speech. Classical liberalism, contrary to liberal branches like social liberalism, look more negatively on social policies, taxation, and the state involvement in the lives of individuals. Okay, that right there is the textbook definition of a conservative. All right. And then he's also a believer in what's called stare decisis, which is a Latin term for a legal doctrine that requires courts to follow historical cases when making a ruling on a similar case. He is against stare decisis, not for it. He does not believe that precedent is the only reason to make a decision. He likes to look at things from a constitutional perspective, and he bases decisions based upon that. So as far as the Supreme Court justice goes, he's definitive, he's decisive, and he stands by his principles. Okay, that's what I'm going to bring up about Clarence Thomas. He was born very poor, had a horrible childhood as far as poverty and opportunity. He completely picked him up by his bootstraps. He is what Tim Scott talks about when he talks about the American dream. Okay, this guy, he worked his way for everything, and he took his heat, he took his shots on people, but he stood by and is considered to be who he was. I'm not a lover of Clarence Thomas, but I do respect him and the decisions he's been involved in, and he has been involved in First, Second, Fourth, Sixth, Eighth Amendment cases, in which he was a key decider. He was one of the key votes in overturning Roe versus Wade, which is the people with Anita Hill were trying to keep him off because they feared he would do just that, which would be a part of that. And he also has weighed in heavily on class action lawsuits when it comes to employee discrimination, and he's against affirmative action. So this is what you need to know about Clarence Thomas. And with that, Steve, I'll end this segment. Would you move on to yours?
Well, my thing is anybody should respect anybody that's accomplished what Clarence Thomas is. Again, them touting out his blackness once again, saying he needs to follow what all the black people on the planet. That's like saying every white person should follow what every white person wants. That's racist, in my opinion.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Of course
but we'll move on. Good stuff on Clarence Thomas. I know you got a lot more in your next segment. We'll look for that soon. But we're going to move on to the third issue that we have here today, which is going to correlate to the economy. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. We'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe. All of our social media episodes on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and Rumble, where we have our channel. Check out the channel so that you can get subscribe and follow and get notified of any of our new content. And do go check out our website, which has a culmination of all of our work at wearemarshallpodcast.com. Nice shirt, by the way, Bill. I loved you showing it. But we're going to move on to the third segment, and it's going to be Biden's tweet touting economic gains haunt him as Wall Street sees sharp declines Tuesday. So the stock market skidded Tuesday, but the economy's doing well, by the way, toward its worst loss in nearly a year.
Was that sarcasm?
Not at all. No, I don't even know what that word means, Bill. Was that sarcasm? Anyway, nearly a year after a disappointing report on inflation, days after President Biden appeared optimistic about the economy. He didn't feel optimistic, my friends out there. He felt gaslighting. He gaslit you as the public to make you think something is what it's not. And I say this, and I'm going into this gaslighting thing, because if you really look at the Democratic Party, when Trump came into office to right now, the best word to describe everything they do is gaslighting. So On Saturday, Biden tweeted the good news, quotes, to start the weekend, saying, the stock market going strong is a sign of confidence in America's economy. The S&P 500 was down 1.9% in late trading as traders delayed their forecast for when the Federal Reserve will deliver the cuts to interest rates they crave so much. The hotter than expected inflation report may have put the final nail into hopes that the first cut could arrive in March. It also pushed many forecasts past May into June. Like I told you, they always correct the numbers, Bill. Remember I told you
Oh
that?
yeah, you gave me a number actually of how many actual times they amended it. It was
And they
staggering.
amend it constantly. So it's another form of gaslighting. So,
Sure it is.
according to data from the CME Group, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 731 points, or 1.9% from its record set a day before that. The NASDAQ Composite, which has been flirting with its all time high set in 2021, was down 2.2% with an hour remaining in trading. Despite the grim news on Wall Street, Biden said the economy was in a full swing recovery. How about swing, batter, miss? But anyway,
Swing.
today's data shows that wage growth has been the strongest of any economic recovery in 50 years, and inflation declined 2/3 from its peak, he posted on X. I'll continue to fight to lower costs for middle class families and stand in the way of congressional Republicans who disagree. Now let's look at that tweet again. Today's data shows that wage growth has been the strongest of any economic recovery in 50 years, he says. Okay? I'm 53, my friends. I've done way better than right now in my life. So let's be realistic. It is not true. There's a gaslighting.
I'm at near rock bottom, and so am I.
Unbelievable. Andy says, and inflation declined 2/3 from its peak. Yeah, its peak of 9.8%. Are you kidding me, my friend? I mean, it didn't come down. It just took off some of that. I mean, the number that it keeps climbing went down. All right, I'll give them that. But it's still climbing, okay? It's like there's this 20-step stairs, and they cut 10 of them off. There's still 10 stairs in front of you, people. It doesn't matter.
If you cut a pizza in 4 slices and eat it all, you're still eating a whole pizza.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, what a moron.
Or should we use the meat example from Black Sheep with Chris Farley?
Oh.
You know, right?
Go ahead.
No, I'm definitely not gonna, but I figured I'd give you a laugh. But then
that was awesome.
At the end of that tweet, it also says, I'll continue to fight to lower costs for middle-class families and stand in the way of congressional Republicans who disagree. Listen, that's gaslighting in itself there, too. The Republicans don't disagree. They've been railing about this guy and inflation forever. And if you're going to fight lower costs for middle-class families, let's be realistic about it. The two of the main things for lower-class families are groceries and gas for your vehicle to get you around to do what you need to do. And in that first segment, I told you they were both up 20-something% in inflation. Okay, that's not this 2.9 and 3.1 they're trying to talk about. That's 20 and 25%, my friends. That's a culmination of all those raises as it went. So pay attention to all the raises and add them up. Don't just listen to the one they try to show you that tries to make it look good. What do you say, Bill?
Great piece, Steve. First, I want to say, to tack on to the gaslighting thing, I say this without any animosity, and I'm not trying to be snarky or anything. I've said it before, but I want to preface, even when I said it before, I mean this in a sincere way. When you talk about these things, these issues, and you either leave out convenient piece of information, like in your first segment, in which they don't mention that it's on top of. They leave that out because people have no attention span, and a lot of the things that they say, the gaslighting aspect of it, it's enormous because what they do is they're talking to people like they're stupid, and that's my stance. I'm not going to back down from it. I think the average voter is uneducated. I'm not going to say the word is ignorant. People have a negative connotation to the word ignorant, and ignorant simply means you're not of knowledge of. You're not aware of. So it's not to say that it's a negative term. but you're either informed or you're not. If you're not, you're ignorant. They treat people like they're ignorant, and a lot of people give them the luxury of doing so. So they say, so that then you to make this tweet on top. So after your first segment, that's one case. Then you make this tweet. I'll begin to fight. I mean, I'll continue. He says he hasn't begun the fight.
Yeah.
One thing he could have done immediately was go right back to energy independence. Okay.
Yes.
People are also ignorant about the pipeline. They say reopen the pipeline. Well, the pipeline was never actually open. It was under construction. What he did was he halted construction of the pipeline. But that pipeline would not only satisfy the green agendas by eliminating all the pollution generated by all the Chicago ships that are bringing in, millions of gallons of oil every day, but it also saves money for the consumer, and we can also not be subject to the whims of the world as they continue to raise and change production and all that and raise price at the pump. People can't afford to get to work how they're supposed to work. That's one thing that shows he's not fighting. The border. Every city in this country is strained right now and seeking federal assistance and probably getting it over his handling of the border as these people continue to flood into cities and they continue to demand resources that people simply don't have. Okay, so all these things, you can't tell people you're gonna continue to fight if you haven't ever fought in the first place. What they're doing is they're just pouring. He has spent more money than any president in history. He's added more to the deficit than almost anybody ever. And he is continuing to send these big, enormous, pork-laden bills that keep getting through. 100 billion here, 80 billion there. We don't even know the real number of what other countries are getting in aid. But the fact is that the gaslighting is a real thing, and people got to understand that. They're treating you like you're stupid. You need to look at this and say, wait a minute. The facts are right there. Why am I being told something different? And the fact that some people fall for it is really amazing to me. So this report comes out, the inflation report comes out, and then he talks about the economy being strong and all that. Wait till the next job report comes out. That's going to eliminate all possibility of
because they'll probably release a job report, like I said, that will show good value for them, and then they'll restate it like they have been over the past year and a half, and no one knows about the restating of the numbers. They just know the initial announcement.
No, unless they wrote it down from the last announcement, they wouldn't remember it anyways.
Dude, they don't write anything down anyway. Let's be realistic. Right. We're a society of headline readers.
We have three major companies right now, Steve, that are on the verge of laying off thousands, tens of thousands of employees. And FedEx is one of them. FedEx is talking about laying off 20,000 people. Okay,
and think about that. That's logistics. Okay, I can understand the laying off of a logistic company, though, Bill, because logistics grew exponentially during COVID. Like, it was ridiculous. It was probably equivalent to the under Bill Clinton, the internet and productivity, because of the fact that no one wanted to go anywhere and no one wanted to do anything. So,
and all the upgrades of companies like Amazon, who created all these revelations in their warehousing, that's logistics also. So yeah.
But what I'm looking at in this, and some things that you spoke about, the big thing that we're running into, okay, is like you said, we could have been energy independent. We could have been selling oil rather than importing any oil. We could have been exporting it and selling it. But what happens is, us as the normal citizens of this country, us plebs, we get bootstrapped by regulations on companies, okay? Sure. Because when they bootstrap these companies in the name of climate control, which nobody cares about except for some Europeans, the Americans and the Canadians, the Chinese, the Asian continent does not give a shit about the climate. They can talk all they want.
They're building more coal plants every day. They don't care.
I live by actions speak louder than words. You can say whatever the hell you want. If you're not doing the actions, it means nothing. So this bootstrapping with regulations on all of our corporations, especially energy, is what's really costing us money, and that's what's making gas prices rise, okay? The border, the gaslighting issue of the border. Fox News had a drone up all over the border, and you could clearly see it looked awful. And we were being invaded, and you're getting told by KGP, Kirby, Biden, and all these people, oh, there's no issue at the border. There's no problem there. I mean, that right there is the epitome of gaslighting. Yeah. If you don't know what gaslighting is, by the way, and we're throwing it around, it's when CNN is on air telling you that protests are calm and peaceful But the gentleman that's saying it right behind him, I'm not even kidding you when I say this, and you can go Google it, look it up. Right behind him, as he's saying these protests are peaceful, there's a fire burning a building down right behind him. If a fire burning a building is peaceful, I don't even know what peaceful is.
Well, Steve, to be fair, they said mostly peaceful.
All right, I know. No, you
I'm kidding.
I get it. But then also, what I got a little aggravated about today, story. We're in New England, Bill, and Boston is building some new housing in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new buildings, brand new. Guess who they're building them and going to let them use? Illegal immigrants.
I'll take illegals for 200, Alex.
They are not going to give it to the homeless in New England. They're going to give it to a legal immigrant. I mean, what's going on in this country when shit like this is going on? I don't even know what to say. So, again,
it
they're
is
gaslighting you on the economy. They're gaslighting you on the border. They're gaslighting you on so many things. This is where you got to pay attention because the Democrats will look you right in the face. The sky above everybody's blue, and they will say it's red. And you'll look up and be like, no, look, it's blue. They're like, no, you have colorblind or something. It's red. Yeah. So pay attention to what they're really saying to you. But I'm going to finish on that segment. Bill's got a big segment he wants to continue on Clarence Thomas. But one thing I'm going to do before, I'll interject after, but I got something to say. But make sure you ask the question that you had given me because I've got something that I want to state after that. But here we are at the We Are Marshall podcast. We've gotten through 4 issues. We're going to hand this off to Bill right now so he can jump on his next issue on Clarence Thomas here at the We Are Marshall podcast. Go right ahead, Bill.
All right. So the reason I brought up Clarence Thomas, and I gave the brief introduction because I didn't want to make one segment too long, is that it was brought up in the context of Black History Month. Newsweek has a really nice feature of running supporting an opposing article. They always have one viewpoint and then the other viewpoint, and it's usually pretty good. They did things about the submersible and all that. And I try to read them whenever I can. But what happened is that someone came out with an egregious article that stated that Clarence Thomas is not to be mentioned, not worthy of mention or honor during Black History Week.
Okay, pause. That's the only thing I want to interject on about this, and I just have to say this.
Well, jump in any time, man. Seriously.
This question I take as a dig at the Democrats, honestly, because they do not take any man, women of color seriously unless they support the Democratic Party only. This is wrong in so many ways. They claim that the Republicans are racist, yet they support a black Supreme Court justice, one that has an amazing resume and has done many great things for our country. We should accept his accomplishment, whether he is black, white, Democrat, or Republican. This, to me, is not even a serious question, Bill. Not from you, but whoever's asking it. That's all I have to say on this subject at all.
That's good. It's a good preface because this is exactly what it is. We're talking about identity, and I'll give you a spoiler.
Yep.
The entire opposing article to whether the one suggesting that he shouldn't be honored basically says that he doesn't support the author's opinion of what a black person with power should do.
As I just said. Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
So I'm going to start with the one supporting him. Okay. This is really good. I'm going to paraphrase whenever I can. But a Newsweek opinion piece by Ken Blackwell, good writer, by the way, is entitled Justice Clarence Thomas Deserves Recognition as an Icon of Black History. Okay. So I'm going to read from it and skim a little bit. It's a lingering stain in this country that one name is consistently absent from Black History Month celebrations each February. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. So this is what it starts with. Based solely on our skin color, many prefer African Americans adopt certain ideological positions, and when we don't, the attacks are relentless. Boom. There it is, okay? Yep. Starts off with just a shotgun blast, okay? Because of his original jurisprudence, Justice Thomas has long been the target of unfair denigration by the political left, dating back to his nomination as the second black justice to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court back in 1991. Through it all, he has confronted these attacks with grace, dignity, and determination. And amid the onslaught, his profound contributions have been overlooked. Clarence Thomas is breaking barriers from a very young age. He was homeless at age 3, lived with an aunt. I'm filling in details. He lived with an aunt, then raised by his grandfather, who taught him accountability, hard work, and not to be a victim. Clarence Thomas to this day says his grandfather was the greatest influence in his life. Okay, and then he ends up being the first black student at St. John Vianney boarding school, to ascending from the Missouri Attorney General's office to becoming under George Bush, under Ronald Reagan. Right after he switched to become a Republican, he was named to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where he took issue with affirmative action. He suggested that the changes be made slowly to avoid culture shock, but later admitted that if not for affirmative action, which he opposed his entire career, he would not have gotten that job, because he said, I clearly got it because I was black. So he had the awareness to say that. Okay. So from the outset, liberal journalists have dismissed Thomas as an intellectual lightweight who took his marching orders from the late Justice Antonin Scalia. He was closely aligned with Scalia, but Scalia had a tremendous amount of respect for him. And he also called him a failed crank who would leave no footprints on the law. So basically, he wasn't going to leave a legacy of any kind. Referring to Thomas's nomination to the EEOC, legal pundit Jeffrey Toobin even went so far as to claim it's clear that Thomas was given the job because he was black. He already admitted that. So these biased attacks on the justice's intelligent and legal mind were completely unfounded and morally wrong. In District of Columbia versus Heller, the first Supreme Court case examining the Second Amendment in decades, Thomas made a critical contribution to Justice Scalia's opinion, and the court narrowly upheld Second Amendment rights in a 5-4 decision. Thomas later authorized the majority opinion in Good News Club versus Milford Central School, asserting a school's denial of a religious club's meeting space violated their First Amendment rights. And in his 2003 Grutter versus Bollinger dissent, he echoed Justice John Marshall Harlan's dissent in Plessy versus Ferguson, very famous case, stating, our Constitution is colorblind. In last year's affirmative action ruling, Thomas reiterated this statement, concurring that race-based admissions at Harvard and University of North Carolina, we talked about this story, were unconstitutional. And that decision has led to a total overhaul of admissions all across this country in private universities now. And of course, he was essential in overturning Roe versus Wade. In no uncertain terms, Thomas's insightful legal mind has helped guide our country through some of the most contentious and consequential legal decisions in its history. Even a liberal, John Paul Stevens, a justice, said the nomination of Thomas brought about the most important change in the court's jurisprudence that took place during my tenure. Okay, so the author goes on to say, given this track record, it's understandable that Thomas emerged as a monumental threat to the political left. His originalism, I discussed that earlier, put him in the crosshairs, and his failure to conform to the left's identity politics, bang, amplified attacks. They cannot accept that judicial philosophy transcends skin color and have stopped at nothing to undermine his influence. And that's the case because they've gone after his wife recently over financial matters. They've attacked him on every front still, even though he's been at since 91, and they show no signs of letting up. He's a person of immense historic importance, not only within the Black community, but in our country and the world. And as we honor Black History Month, we should celebrate his towering achievements, admirable resilience, and unrivaled contributions to our country. And may I add, and for his tendency to have zero fucks given. All right? I love it. Now, here come the slings and arrows. Amisha Cross says, Clarence Thomas is not a Black hero. He's an enemy of Black people. Yeah, well, you think you're outraged now, Steve? Wait to hear this article. I'm sorry, I am biased. This article outrages me, but I'm going to try to treat it with open-mindedness here. Throughout Black History Month, she writes, we recall the achievements of Black Americans. These include the champions of the Civil Rights Movement, of course. Martin Luther King, of course, Malcolm X, Medgar Evans, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Rosa Parks. The first Black Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall, also looms large. Marshall fought for civil rights long before assuming his rightful position in the highest court in the land. He led the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and was known for fighting segregation, a fight which, of course, ended with Brown versus Board of Education. And that type of legacy is deserving of the utmost regard and respect during Black History Month. It stands in stark contrast to his successor on the court. Thomas is no Thurgood Marshall. Where Marshall fought tooth and nail to upend threats to equity, civil rights and justice, Thomas fights to take America back. I think that's a veiled shot about MAGA, but okay. He fights against the working class and minorities, fights against. I had to reiterate that. Fights against the working class and minorities, finding unique ways to fight against the black community that he hails from in the process. It's why black Americans shouldn't celebrate Justice Thomas during Black History Month. He doesn't deserve it. His betrayals began before he was on the Supreme Court. Before becoming a justice, he worked on the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and he fought the use of class action lawsuits to enforce workplace discrimination laws. That's right, he did. Thomas also had a tumultuous confirmation hearing amid the Nita Hill allegations that he sexually harassed her. Her testimony should have ended his career then and there, but a black woman with credible claims of abuse in 1991 wasn't believed any more than the majority of black women who are systemically erased from the Me Too movement today are believed. Oh, God. Thomas escaped accountability. He gave black America in return was aiding and abetting. Here we go, Steve. Ready? What 2 words am I going to give you next? White supremacy.
Uncle Tom, right?
Oh, yeah. No, white supremacy. That's the words. You got to throw those in there somewhere. While cloaked in a judicial robe, the positions Thomas has taken to paint a clear picture that he is averse to considerations of race in any and all programs, despite the persistent and evidenced inequality present in housing, education, healthcare, and employment. And then take the fight about the ballot. One blacks have fought for generations, for not having the right to vote at all, to poll taxes, literacy tests, gerrymandering, redistricting, and intimidation, you name it, black voters faced it. We talked about voter intimidation last night.
There's a key word you just said, and she said. F-A-C-E-D. Faced. They did. All of us have faced something. It's gone. That faced means it's in the past. Leave it there. Let's go.
It's past tense. But those facts don't stop Thomas from fighting the key people who look like him from the polls. In 2013, he voted with majority in Shelby County versus Holder to gut the Voting Rights Act, arguing racism in voting no longer existed, and enough progress had been made that the pre-clearance standard was no longer needed. This action and misguided ruling allowed southern states in particular to advance rapid-fire voter ID laws and voter suppression tactics designed to limit black access to the ballot. But Thomas's most egregious take runs in stark contrast to his predecessor, Marshall legacy, where Marshall fought for equity education and broke a system of educational segregation. Thomas ceased to reinstate it by opposing affirmative action. Thomas argued that affirmative action creates a narcotic of dependency, where there should be an ethic of responsibility and independence.
And what did it do? What did it literally do? I mean, let's be honest. The dude, and I'm sorry to call him, that's disrespectful, I guess, but the guy.
I think you're showing respect by saying that.
Yeah. He basically said exactly what's transpiring today and why. And that's not why affirmative action was eradicated, just so we all understand. It was because the law was bad. It was a bad law. Same with the Roe versus Wade. It was a bad law. This is why they got eradicated, not because of hate of each one of them. It's because they looked into the legalese wording of these laws and they found out that they weren't correct under the Constitution. Continue, my friend.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
He bemoaned the ideology of victimhood that allows the marginalized to make demands of society for reparations and recompensation. Thomas has remained staunchly against affirmative action for decades, despite once claiming that without it, God only knows where I'd be today. All right. I have a lot to say about this. A lot of it's the obvious, and I think that you're going to probably think the same things that I'm saying here. But I want to respect the author's opinion. But to me, it just seems like nothing but a recycle of just old, tired, just racist ideology bullshit that we're all tired of hearing about. Okay,
let's go this
Clarence
way. Let's be
okay.
realistic about this whole issue right here. Okay, she is saying that people are white people. It's white supremacy. It's racist. Yet, is she a black woman herself writing this?
She is. Yes.
So she's being racist against another black person.
Yep. Because it's an Uncle Tom piece. Call it what you want. Yeah.
But my whole point being is she's whining and railing about racism, right? Then she's being racist. I just
yes.
Continue,
Yeah,
Bill.
exactly. No, I was hoping you'd say that because that's what it is. Okay, but being racist against someone in your own race, that's
Well,
just
no,
taking it
but
on
this
another
is the
level.
problem. This is the problem with them, and I've heard this said. And I'm not saying all black people think this way. And not understand this. Let me just premise anything I'm going to say
There is
going
no
forward.
all
There is
anytime.
no absolutes in anything. Remember that. Nothing is absolute. But a lot of people are sick of this, and they keep saying it. But keep going, Bill. Keep going.
No, but the thing is that when I look at this, I highlighted some things that I wanted to touch on because I touched on his history, which was really extensive. I mean, the information about this guy, he's done so much. He's been
Well,
involved in
well,
so many
well,
cases,
one
so many
thing I'm
decisions.
very grateful is at least you've touched on less than Joe Biden has.
So Clarence has been involved in 475 decisions. Okay, he's a very, very prominent guy, very well versed in the law, and he's very principled. And I don't ever think about his race when I think about him as a justice. I think about him. Yes, I am, like I said, a conservative. I look at him as a conservative beacon that I always know will do what I think is the right thing when it comes to the Supreme Court. I only voted for Donald Trump because of the Supreme Court. I knew that if Trump won the election, when we had a few replacements coming in, I feared what the Democrats would put up, and that I was therefore happy when he won it. But you're talking about the mention of skin color, speaking on behalf of African Americans that she doesn't necessarily know she's even speaking on behalf of. She's speaking for herself.
Yep.
She's saying that we expect that you adopt certain ideological positions. When we don't, the attachment is relentless. So now you're Thomas, you're over there saying, so what are you telling me? That I have to have what a universal black mindset when I take an office based upon the law? Because he believes that color is not a factor. He believes that precedent is not a factor. He bases his decisions based upon the law. And he says things are colorblind. This is offending somebody? I don't get it. And then to call him an intellectual lightweight. The guy's a genius. He was the number one student, everything he ever belonged in.
But this is
Highly
what they
respected
do.
for his
They
intellect.
just attack someone to try to ruin them.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah,
thing.
they're reducing him to nothing here.
One of our favorite podcasters out there said it, that they go to bare knuckle and they will ruin one of their own kind if they go against the grain on them. It's unbelievable.
Oh, sure. But I mean, the expectations here, she has a big problem with his policies on affirmative action. We did a lengthy podcast on affirmative action, and I think we both stated, and I think that people will support this notion, that people should be hired upon merit. I mean, look at the people that have come under fire recently.
Exactly. We're looking at the result of DEI all throughout the country right now. And we're seeing how that's not the way to go. You should never hire someone. Hey, a guy walked in, he's black, we should hire him. No, you should hire someone when you sit them down, interview them, look at their resume, and check their references to see if they're the right person for the job. I don't care if they're disabled, if they're different color, if they've got their hair spiked up, they got tattoos all over their face like Post Malone. Basically what I'm saying,
right.
I don't care what you look like. If you are qualified to do the job, you should get the job.
Yeah, what do you bring to the table, really? I mean, that's the question.
How are you going to benefit the entity that's about to hire you?
Right. And I think that anybody of any color should be ashamed of themselves for playing the race card and instead adopt what one of my favorite message of the campaign was Tim Scott when he talked about stop the victimhood. Stop blaming people for anything that happened to you on race. Stop acting like a victim and start just going out there and doing what you can to build your own American dream. No, an American dream is a lofty concept these days. I get it, okay? But I was outraged by this article, and I felt this will be my topics for the night because okay, as part of Black History Month, look at how an influential man he is. So if you want to reduce him to his blackness, he's a hell of an influential black person. Yes. Why wouldn't you honor him? I mean, if Newsweek can give Man of the Year to outright criminals because they were just influential, then why can't this be?
Well, let's be realistic. I'm willing to bet if you polled a majority of African Americans or black people, I don't know what the PC thing is. I hate even bringing that up. But if you polled
Yeah.
his race, they would probably in a majority be very proud of the man. There's just a
Oh, he's
small group
principled.
trying to tear people
Yeah.
down like they always do. But
And he wants
good stuff,
people,
Bill.
regardless of his color, to just simply work for things and follow the law and basically not act like victims. So this is something that
The
anybody can
bottom
relate
line is
to.
here's something I truly believe. I truly believe this phrase. Do you not appreciate, respect, and like more when you accomplish things that were hard? The guy accomplished a ton of things that were hard. We should be praising him, period. How many
Yep.
people
Yep.
become Supreme Court justices in the scheme of this whole country since we've been around for 250 years? It's a small number.
Yeah.
The gentleman deserves his due, okay? Period. I don't care which,
He
it's a
does.
party thing and racial thing, but whatever. Good stuff. I hope some of you learned some stuff about Clarence Thomas, because Bill laid out a lot of stuff there for you, and maybe that will give you a new perspective on the gentleman if you were getting swayed by the gaslighting left or the gaslighting of the people that hate others of their own race or ethnicity or party just because they go against it. I commend the man for having his own thoughts, wanting
Yep.
the freedom of speech, and doing everything he has done, whether I disagree with him or not. Like, we could go look at Ruth Gator Ginsburg, okay? She just passed away. I hope
Yep.
she rests in peace. I disagreed with her politics vehemently, but she was still an amazing, accomplished person.
Oh,
Notice how
how
I
can you
said
not respect RBG? Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
someone learned from what I just said. Person. I didn't say she was anything else but a human being.
Steve,
But we're going to move on.
you keep saying it. Keep saying it. Yeah.
Yep. We're at the end of the podcast, and every time we get to this point, I usually do a human interest feel-good story, a technological breakthrough, or a medical breakthrough. Today, I just found a story that I thought was kind of neat and interesting, especially because of the age of the gentleman involved. So here at the We Are Marshall podcast, we're going to finish this one with a human interest story about a 100-year-old D-Day veteran who he knew World War II was ending 48 hours before the rest of the world, and he still keeps the historical note that showed him that. So every child born in the Morgan family of Cheshire will be able to hold in their hands a very unique piece of World War II memorabilia, thanks to the current patriarch, Bernard. Sergeant Bernard Morgan was working as a Royal Air Force codebreaker in 1945 when he deciphered a secret telex that read, quote, "The German war is now over, ... The surrender is effective sometime tomorrow, quote." So last week, Bernard celebrated his 100th birthday. And while he had already offered copies of the communique to 2 different museums, he's vowed that the real one will pass to his family when he dies. Ahead of his birthday, the great-granddad read out the note to interviewers, dressed in uniform he wore on D-Day to remind others of the liberties they had won in the victory. Bernard was the youngest of the Royal Air Force sergeant to land in Normandy in June 1944, when he and his team of codebreakers disembarked on Gold Beach, where the British Army defeated the 352nd Infantry Division and suffered 1,100 casualties. Quote, "I am always keen for the younger generation to know exactly what went on during the war and to appreciate the sacrifice that our lads made so that we can enjoy the freedoms we have today," said Morgan. He was stationed in Schweringen, Germany, when he got the message on around May 6, 1945, declaring that the war in Europe was ending via his Type X machine. The note stated, "The German war is now over. At Reims last night, the instrument of surrender was signed, which in effect is a surrender of all personnel of the German forces, all equipment and shipping, and all machinery in Germany. Nothing will be destroyed anywhere. The surrender is effective sometime tomorrow. This news will not be communicated to anyone outside the service nor to members of the press." Following the news, and as you might imagine, Bernard had a big party with his close comrades, lighting a huge bonfire and celebrating into the night while being careful not to give the game away. He kept both the note and his role in the war hidden for 50 years due to secrecy documents he had signed, which finally elapsed in 1994. The Imperial War Museum in London and in Manchester both wanted the original copy. They weren't interested in a photocopy, but I'm keeping it for my family, he said. It was a surprise, he said, of receiving the note. We couldn't tell anybody until we got the final message to say the war in Germany was now over. We had to decode it. It was in code. It was great when we got that. I was in a little place called Schwernewagen, Germany, near Hamburg. It was nice to see that no more soldiers, sailors, or airmen were giving their lives, and also to thank the civilians who gave their lives for the same reason, he added. What to me, this was an interesting, neat little tidbit of a story around this time right now. 100-year-old
I love this
guy,
stuff.
hides this note for 50 years because he signs a thing of secrecy. But I think the best thing, he's going to keep it for his family. But the sad thing is, and let's be honest about human nature, unfortunately, when Mr. Morgan, Bernard Morgan, passes away, I'm sure someone in his family is going to sell that to one of the museums at some point. And that's kind of a travesty for him. But if that enriches his family in any way, I'm sure he'd be grateful for that. And this is such a wonderful, interesting story. What do you think, Bill?
Oh, it's amazing on so many levels. Just to think about having something like that in your possession is it's like having the Holy Grail, you know. And
Well, how about having the knowledge in your possession 2 days prior to everything going down? That's amazing.
Yeah. And the family should appreciate that, and hopefully they give it the respect it deserves. But he did his part. I admire his sense of honor and not releasing all that information until it was declassified. It's an amazing story. And the people, I really regret and fear the day that people just have forgotten the greatest generation. You look at people today, I'm not going to say anything bad people, it's just different. You had guys lying about their age to go fight Germans in 1939, 40, and 41 and all that. It's like they wanted to be part of this. They wanted to do so. It was a just cause. Now things are so blurry and people are so unwilling to stand up for the notion of service. I have so much respect for that. We did the story on the Rona about my great uncle. He wasn't allowed to speak of that incident because it was classified, because the weapon that sunk the Rona was not known of, and it was classified. He kept that until I'm going to say he just turned 100. I think he kept that secret for almost 70 years.
So almost
never told anybody about it.
Story to that, yeah. Is he still around, by the way?
He is, yeah. He just had his 100th birthday in July.
He would be wonderful to have on the podcast.
Oh, he would. He's a tremendous guy.
And like you said,
part of my ex-wife's family, but
that to me, like you're saying, you use the phrase, and a lot of people do, the greatest generation ever. I mean, it is a different generation. They were a lot tougher, but that we are a proponent of why things are not tougher today. We've coddled and babied many of the people because our whole goal in life as humans, we want to make that easier for those that come after us. And we're doing it to a point, and to a point it's hurting us. But very good podcast again, Bill. I think we got a lot of information in there. If anybody has any questions or issues about any topics in here or any other episodes, you can reach myself at steve@wearemarshallpodcast.com. And you can reach Bill also at bill@wearemarshallpodcast.com. You can go to Amazon and look up their Vela tab and check out some of Bill's episodes that he's written.
I've got 3 pieces on there now, almost 4.
He's got almost 4 episodes of stuff, which could be a blog, a short story, a number of things. Go support him, see what he's doing there, and let him know how you feel about his information. And if you like what he's writing, he would love the input, and it's good.
Absolutely.
So go to Vela on Amazon and check out Bill's episodes. Myself, you can go to Amazon and purchase my first novel, The Unforeseen Enemy, by myself, Stephen Marshall, and that's for sale now. And help me get this thing drive up the bestsellers list. I'd love that. And also on Friday, I will be releasing my second novel. That's called The Perception Therapist. That one's going to be really good. I hope you guys dive right into that because it's going to be a different aspect from the previous book I wrote. We'd also like for you to go to all of our social media and share it all over yours. You can find us to like and share on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and also our channel, which is on an application called Rumble, which you can download for free, and that's Rumble, Rumble. Download that for free. You can go to our channel, subscribe and follow, and you'll get notification of any of our new content that's coming out. We are going to start building on our member site, on our website, a member area where we're going to do a multitude of things. I've had some people come to me. I'm a huge sports fan. Bill likes sports. Maybe we're going to do some sports podcasts on there and a number of other things. So stay tuned. Go support our sponsors, Local Prints New Hampshire out of Hampstead, a full-service screen printing company that is nationwide. All you have to do is go to our website at wearemarshallpodcast.com, click on his link on the top left. It spins. It's like a graphic. Check it out. And go sign up and see what he can do for you if you need screen printing jobs. And also, go check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com, large dating website with all the bells and whistles of every one of the dating players out there in the dating application market, but they have a much less expensive price than all of these big players. We'd also like you to continue to support all our endeavors, like we said, Bill on his Velo, and also check out my books and novels that are coming out going forward. We enjoyed this podcast. We got a lot of information in. Hope you learned something like we do every time, and we hope to get you a couple more podcasts, or at least one more this week, and we'll be talking to you soon. I hope you have a good night, and thank you for listening.